Good afternoon. I am mad and I'm tired of this. Where's Matt? Yeah, Matt. Matt and the Georgia Forestry Association asked other speakers to come up and talk about trucks. They talk about trees. And in the little video at lunch today, a guy got to talk about sitting on his back porch, drinking coffee, and listening to the birds. But what do they ask old Dan to come up and talk about? They ask old Dan to come and talk about the most ostentatious, the most ignorant, the stupidest, and just downright aggravating topic in forestry today, and that's labor, of all things. So I'm just not putting up with that anymore. I guess I'm going to have to, though, aren't I? So anyway, let's talk about labor today. Which one of these buttons do you push? Give it to it. Hit it. Let's talk about the present. Right now there is talk at the federal level of comprehensive immigration reform. Now I say talk because that's all they do is they talk, and then nothing gets done. And what's really aggravating to me is I go up to Washington 3 or 4 times a year, and I don't know if you've noticed or not, but this happens to be an election year. Has anybody noticed that? I believe you have. Well, if you go to Washington and you want to talk about immigration, this is an election year, Dan. We can't talk about immigration in an election year. You will get that exact answer. So what does that tell you? That tells me that they're very interested in getting reelected. So if you don't want to talk about immigration in a re-election year, then I don't know. But that's exactly how it is. But then next year won't be a election year, and so we ought to be able to talk about comprehensive immigration reform. And by the way, comprehensive immigration reform is a topic that is very interesting to you. If you have anything to do with growing trees, planting trees, anything at all to do with any of that, immigration reform is very interesting to you because virtually all pine trees are harvested at the nursery and planted by immigrant labor of some sort or another. Now, a lot of those are from H-2B visa holding workers, but a lot of them are what I call just workers. They're just there. And so in some way or another, immigrant labor has a lot to do with your industry. In the present time, the U.S. Department of Labor and ICE investigations are everywhere in your business. There are some people I see in the audience who get investigated every 2 or 3 years just because they have a large labor force and they're either harvesting trees in the nurseries or they're planting pine trees. And if you don't plant those pine trees, you know what happens 17 to 20 years from now? Nothing. Absolutely nothing happens 17 to 20 years from now if they're not planted. So the U.S. Department of Labor is going to come and visit some of you in this room. So you need to be ready for them. And however you get your labor advice and whoever you get it from, you need to go ahead and get it and make sure that your records are correct when they show up. And when the ICE people show up, the only thing you need as an employer is an I-9 on every one of your workers. Now, if you have an I-9, and I know everybody in this room knows exactly what an I-9 is, if you have one and it's completed correctly, the ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement people, they actually leave your place. Now, they may leave with some of your workers, but they don't leave with you if you have an I-9. And I think most of you find that pretty important. Make sure you have that I-9. Put that down on your notes. I know you're all taking notes. That when I get home, I'm going to ask everybody in my office, do I have I-9s? Not only do you have them, are they completed correctly? You can Google I-9 on the internet and it'll tell you exactly how to do it. And if I were the CEO of a business, when I got home, whenever you get home from here, I'd make sure that those I-9s are correct because there are very big fines if your I-9s are incorrect. If you don't have I-9s, they might haul you away. There's a shortage of U.S. workers. I just heard an astounding number from Deb and Chris of how many thousand truck drivers that are short. Well, let me tell you, everywhere you look, there are help wanted signs. And when Mr. Trump says he's going to bring all of these jobs back to the United States. Who's going to do them? Everywhere I look, there's a shortage of workers in those kind of jobs. Everybody who wants to work in the United States is working. Now, particularly in tree planting and harvesting new trees and so forth, it's a seasonal job, so a lot of people don't want to do that kind of work. So we have something called the H-2B visa program. This allows you to bring workers from a foreign country on a seasonal, short-term basis to plant pine trees. And almost all pine trees now are planted by H-2B workers. So we're going to talk about that program for just a little bit. Hit me. There's two ways that you can have workers in a seasonal way at your business. The first one is to hire them yourself. They're your own workers. You can hire workers to harvest those pine trees in the nursery. You can hire workers yourself to plant new pine trees after they've been harvested off of the tree farms that we talked about. So that's one way to do it. But if you're going to do that, you absolutely must make sure that everything you're doing is correct. Your records are correct. You're paying minimum wage. You're paying overtime if you're supposed to be paying overtime. Now, a lot of jobs in the forest industry are exempt from overtime for one reason or another. So if you're not paying overtime at your place to anybody, you need to find out, am I right or wrong about that? And exactly why am I not paying overtime? There's a new salary test. Everybody in this room has workers that you pay on a salary basis. Executives and a lot of other people who may or may not should be paid on a salary basis. But if you're paying anyone on a salary basis and you aren't paying at least $50,000 a year to that person, you need to look up and see, are you in compliance or not? This new salary test from the U.S. Department of Labor is going to affect a lot of people in this room. So if you're not paying $50,000 a year to your salaried workers, you need to look into that and make sure that you're correct. And if you're not paying 50, you are not correct. You need to do something else. And there's various ways to take care of that. You can call me, or there's a lot of other people you could call about that. Or now, if you don't hire these workers yourself, you can use a farm labor contractor. In order to employ a farm labor contractor, by all you tree farmers out there, the ones who have the pine forests and so forth in Georgia, in order to have those trees reforested, that contractor has to have a farm labor contractor license. It's a salmon-colored card. So before you let people onto your land to reforest, you make sure that they have that card. Now, if they say, yes, I have it, it's in the truck, no, they don't have it. Yes, I have it, it's back at the office. No, they don't have it. There's a lot of people out there right now planting pine trees with total illegal alien crews, and they're total illegal aliens themselves that have no licenses. This is problematic for you because there are large fines associated with hiring unregistered farm labor contractors. Look at the license. If they're bringing workers in a van, make sure that that van is listed on their license, because you can be responsible if that van has an accident on your place. So all at once, there's a van load of Mexican workers, and they're on your place, and they turn the thing over, and 2 of them get killed. And the guy has no license. He's an illegal alien himself. All the workers were illegal aliens. Now, you cannot imagine how much government red tape you're going to be in to get out of that situation. However, if you, the landowner, and you've hired a consultant, and you've hired a reforestation contractor that has a valid license, the vehicles they use are right, and they've inspected, and they're safe, and so forth, you are way ahead of the game. Your insurance company may have to pay some liability and so forth, but they're not going to haul you off. And as we discussed before, the not hauling you off is an important aspect of you being the CEO of that company. Their workers have to be housed. There are joint employment issues. If you have a contractor working for you, leave those workers alone. Don't go out and talk to them. If they're planting trees and the root goes into the ground like this and it comes back up like that, a J root. Has anybody ever heard of a J root? Don't go tell that worker, hey, listen, Dan, you're not planting that tree correctly. You need to make sure that it goes straight in the ground and the roots can take off and they don't go right back up. Don't talk to that worker. You talk to the supervisor. You talk to that farm labor contractor, because to do otherwise, you could be held as jointly liable for anything that that contractor is, or more importantly, is not doing. So those are just little words of wisdom for you people engaged in the tree planting, tree raising, and harvesting business. If you're dealing with a contractor that does the H-2B visa program, please contract with them as soon as you can. There are problems with the H-2B visa program right now that have been caused by the current administration because they think that there are plenty of people in the United States who want to plant pine trees. I'm telling you, there are not. Most all pine trees are planted by H-2B visa holding workers. Therefore, your whole world has to do with immigrant labor. And this H-2B program is a very vital part of your world. Hit it. A farm labor contractor has to be registered. That most of them use the H-2B visa program, which is currently slow. I've got to have at least 6 months in order just to get the program right and to get your workers here on time. And getting workers here on time is of great interest to you because trees are planted generally from the end of October up until sometime in March or April. Depends on where you are in the world. Now, if your workers come in and are late and they don't get here until March, it's over. No trees are going to be planted on your land this year. So contract with those agencies who do the tree planting as early as you can. Make sure that they have a letter of intent from you. And then lastly, let me talk about the cap. We have been working hard, and some people at this table have worked very hard on the cap. There's a cap of 66,000 workers per year who can come to the United States under the H-2B program. Now, we need a lot more workers than that. And I know some people at this table right here did a yeoman's work getting Congress through the budget process to have a returning worker exemption. That means that if the H-2B visa holding worker from Mexico has been here in the last 3 years under a visa, they've been here legally, then they don't count towards the 66,000. And that's been very important for us to get that into the legislation for the past year, and hopefully, Deb, we'll get into it again this year. It's not a for certain thing. But we're working towards that, and everybody in Washington and people like me out in the field work towards these issues with tree planters and the forestry industry in general. Hit it. Forestry industries and others have sued the U.S. Department of Labor 6 times in the past 3 or 4 years because they put unduly restrictive legislation on us. They've made the wages for tree planters, tree harvesters, people who pull weeds in the nurseries and so forth, outrageous. In some places, it costs you $32 an hour to plant pine trees. Outrageous, totally outrageous. In Georgia, it ranges anywhere from 12, 14, 16, somewhere like that. So you're pretty well off in Georgia, but other states are just outrageous. You hit it the wrong way. Hit it again. Yep, hit it again. There we go. All right, lobby efforts. I've already talked about this great group of people up here at the table and the great job they've done. There's some other people, C.J. Lake in Washington and Laura Flanagan and other people who have done a really great job of that. Compliance with regulations. I put on seminars across the country on foresters, how to comply with federal labor laws. If you can possibly hook up with one of those or send somebody from your office to learn what the latest the government is looking for, that would probably be a good idea. The future, comprehensive immigration reform, ain't going to happen. I have no confidence in it. And it's vital to you, but I honestly have no confidence in it. More enforcement on employers, I have big confidence on that. That is absolutely going to happen. They're going to come to you. The wage and hour will be coming to you. IRS and OSHA and IRS, if you have independent contractors out there, if you're calling all your workers independent contractors, you need to look at that when you get back to your office because that's what they're after. The IRS is after it. The Wage and Hour is after independent contractors to see are they employees or are they independent contractors. There's going to be increased press involvement, lawsuits. The Affordable Care Act. Have you all thought about that? Life is too short to talk about that today. This is Sunday. That would be sacrilegious, wouldn't it? So we are not going to talk about it, but it's a topic that you need to know something about. Congressional help. I take 3 or 4 junkets a year to Washington, D.C. I take clients up there, other members of the industry and so forth, and we lobby Congress. So out of those 3 or 4 visits per year, I'm supposed to tell something that's not in my bio. Well, here's something about Washington, D.C. that's not in my bio. I usually go up there and lobby Congress, talk to government agencies and so forth, but on Memorial Day, I ride the Harley to Washington, D.C. for Rolling Thunder. 900,000 to 1 million motorcycles park at the Pentagon. They leave and go up behind the Lincoln Memorial, up Constitution Avenue, past the saluting Marine, up around the Capitol and back down Independence. It's a MIA and POW demonstration. And what that means is that there are still some of those guys and gals out there who are missing or POWs. And we're just 1 million motorcyclists reminding Congress and the people in Washington, D.C. that there are still issues with that out there. So that wasn't in my bio. Moving right along. Contact your representatives. Do not leave the wording up to them. Heck, who knows what they'll write. Contact them. If they don't know you when you walk in their door, you're not doing this right. They need to know your name when you walk in their door. And if you're there enough, they will. They're usually pretty good with names. And so you need to urge all forestry interests around you to do the same. So you have these folks, great folks up here at your table that help you with that. Hit it. Media relations, I'm going to spend I don't know how much time I have, but I'm going to spend just a few minutes on media relations. You know, the media is out there, and they are not always friendly to you. And one of the things that happens is under this H-2B visa program, a lot of media thinks that there are plenty of workers out there in Georgia who just can't wait to go plant pine trees out on your land. Well, that is not true. So then what happens is here comes some media people saying, hey, listen, I've noticed that your whole crew are Hispanic, but the people around your area, the towns and cities around you, are predominantly white or black or both, or they got a few Hispanics, but how is it that your whole crew is Mexicans? And so you have answers for that. Well, listen, here's a couple of topics when they ask that. We have tried to hire all the local people that we possibly can. We just can't find enough who want to do this kind of work. So we have relied then on a program that if we can't find enough workers, we're allowed to bring workers from a foreign country to plant our pine trees, to harvest our pine trees in the nurseries and so forth. And by the way, because we're able to do that, we're able to stay in business. And because of that, we buy a lot of Caterpillar tractors where's Caterpillar made? Where? That's it, LaGrange, Georgia. Because of that, we're able to buy a lot of Caterpillars. We buy seed, we buy fertilizers. We do all of those things because we're allowed to bring these workers in who go home when we're done with them. They don't stay here and collect welfare. They don't stay here and do any of those kind of things. They go home where their home is, in Mexico or Guatemala generally. Okay? And whatever you do to that reporter, do not ever, ever speak bad of local workers. So if I notice most of this audience is men, so if you get this cute little reporter comes up to you and she says, now tell me what the real truth is. How come you don't hire these local workers? And you say, well, listen, these local workers won't work. They are the sorriest lot there ever was. All they want to do is draw welfare and unemployment and so forth. They just won't work, so we bring Mexicans. Can you see the headline the next morning? Your name, Dan Bremer, a local forestry owner, says, only Mexicans can do this work because the local help is too sorry to do it. Don't, under any circumstances whatsoever, be led into temptation by some cute little reporter of some sort. And they'll do it. I'll guarantee you they'll do it. And you think about old Dan when that reporter is out there talking to you. And after you've told them 2 or 3 points of why you're doing this and so forth, here's what I want you to do. Are you listening? Is everybody listening now? I want you to shut up. Shut up. Don't go on and on. You give your 2 or 3 little topics and make sure they're right on point about Caterpillar and LaGrange, about all these other things you buy because you're staying in business because of these works. And then after you've done that, it's tempting to go on and talk. Don't do it. Shut up. And that ends my presentation today on those 2 good words. Anybody has any questions, I'll be around.